in the teacher mode right now, and I'm navigating to my assignment section. I've already created an assignment here, but what I'll do is start by creating an assignment. And like I said, all of these settings are normal Canvas settings, right? So I'll do a sample, argument essay. And underneath, you could say, please, cite 3 sources, whatever, MLA format, whatever point value. It connects to the grade book as well. And here is the submission type. And if you're following along with me, go ahead to select external tool. Typically, teachers have, another option. And now find, you could type Turnitin and then find, but more or less this opens your list. So they do have to scroll down kind of alphabetically. Those 2 scrolls kind of get confused, user design wise, that kind of annoys me. And click Turnitin and now select. Okay, so that is basically the most important part, to make sure teachers are aware that they have to choose external tool in order to access Turnitin. For viewing purposes, you may want to open up in a new tab. Sometimes it's easier to see the list of student results, up to your preferences. Now here, these are all your own settings, so up to them. And as far as due date goes, whatever you put here will correspond to Turnitin settings, and then just saving here. Okay. Well, just so that you know, the first time you do this, there will be a user agreement that pops up right here that says, do you, agree to, so students will have that, teachers will have that. And now, do you notice there's nothing here because I don't have any assignments yet? So this would be my inbox, and it's telling me, nothing's here. But there is a menu. I want to remind you, these 3 lines, if I zoom out a little bit, it would look like this. But if I'm zoomed up, I mentioned, opening up in a new tab, you might notice that it's hiding inside the menu. Okay, so we first set up the Canvas external tool settings. Now we are clicking on the Turnitin settings. So let me just kind of make it a little bit easier to read. All of this is fixed. I can't change the grade, the dates, we've already decided on that. But underneath, do you see optional settings?
Yes.
This is where I want to make sure, because you probably revisited these with Giselle, but now in Canvas they do look a little bit different, and the terminology is a little bit different. But the main idea is that teachers can choose whether or not allow late submissions, whether or not they allow resubmissions. So I'm going to be lenient and say yes, they get a few chances to do that. Any filters, so last time you probably talked about how it's going to show up, maybe the student has done everything right, they quoted correctly, but maybe you don't want that quote to show up as part of the match. So, this is one way to filter out the noise, so the number is not as inflated. So they set it and can forget, just like the infomercial, set it and forget it. And this one also I recommend allow students to view originality reports, meaning I want this to be hopefully a teachable moment where they can see the matches, actionable, they can do something about it, fix their mistakes for next time. But it's up to the teacher. They could also say no, for my eyes only, that's just fine. Okay, so these are teacher level settings. Example, a phrase, a very common phrase might be like, according to this article. Those are 4 words that are just a common phrase. A science one, I know we were talking about entering the Earth's atmosphere. That's not plagiarism, it's just a short phrase. So you could set a minimum, 8 to 10 might be a good starting point, so that it's only matching 10 words or more, a more significant chunk. Okay, next up, some of the more complex, I mentioned peer review. So you could have the student not only upload, a research paper, argumentative paper, but also a part 2 would be a peer review of that same assignment. So it would automatically shuffle out those assignments, redistribute them. You could, if the teacher wanted to pair up certain students, anonymously, whatever. So that adds sort of part 2 to an assignment. Now, if a teacher is not ready, they don't want to, they would just not have one. But it is, like I said, another very valuable tool, especially for those other departments who may not necessarily just want plagiarism, but want peer review too.
Mm-hmm.
So you could select yes for training purposes. We'll just select that. Now, rubrics, you can see from our drop-down menu, they're here to choose from, or right now you could launch into the rubric manager. So that opens up the kind of ability for teachers to create their own, maybe adjust one of the rubrics that we have here. So they could play with these different tools. This is what you use for plagiarism, so turn this on when you need that piece. So for now, I'll just say no rubric. Now, grammar checking, I'll go ahead and enable yes. I think that is a easy, everybody wants to turn that one on to help scan. And notice it's going to be for high school. If you have AP students, you might consider advanced. Notice you've got different options, English language learners, and checking off all of those. Finally, save those as defaults. So while admins can't set those defaults, at least teachers can set it once. So again, I would recommend the very first time, set it, forget it. These kind of live in that settings here. So, taking a look at those, hitting the submit button. Okay, so if you added peer review, there would be a kind of setup and then the actual assignment, the students, what they've submitted. So here, just like how we set up the first paper, now there are some settings for, this paper. This is, a whole different assignment. So remember, it could be anonymous. What if a student was late, didn't turn anything in? Do they get to participate in peer review? So there's all sorts of kinds of options here if they do want to try this tool. Again, additional settings. And then you could also set up questions for students to read each other's work. So for example, at which point were you most interested? Does it have a coherent point of view? How can it be improved? So these are kind of survey questions. So students aren't just commenting and saying, I liked it, it was good. Absolutely. So this is still a setup, right? So another setup would be distribution. So I don't have students yet, but if I wanted to pair up certain students, otherwise it's just automatic. Right. So after that, when students actually are, submitting the reviews, the teacher can read them all and kind of make sure, they're being appropriate, and the student could review their own, whoever's left them a review. So right. Teacher can see everybody, the student would see their own. So now here I am in my fake class, the assignments, wherever the student is accessing that from the calendar or wherever, here's that, I'll click on this one. So it's waiting for me the first time I need to agree, and now it's prompting me to upload. So once I do that, it's going to ask, well, is it from my files? Is it copy paste text or cloud? I believe your students are on Google Drive, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, so you'll want to remind them to do the cloud option, and it will prompt them to say, well, which account, give permission for us to connect the accounts. And now I'm just searching my, all of my folders. Where is that paper? Here it is. And now I've got my assignment here to upload. So here it is, accept, submission, and save. So that's the final step. Now remember all those settings. So if I allowed the student to resubmit, if I allowed them to see the results, I could come here and, refresh my page depending on the connection speed. 97%. So because I allowed the student to see it, I can click on it and look at the results. Maybe if it's before the due date, I can fix those mistakes. It does take them on a tour the very first time, to explain what's going on here. So here I turned on my grammar feedback, and unfortunately everything's highlighted because we use this paper a lot. But you'll remember the blue comments are the teacher comments. So no one has commented yet. The red represents all the matches. So this poor paper has been used across all of our trainings. So it's submitted lots of places. The filters, remember, if we set 10 words, those things are here too. And then the grammar check, I wanted to remind you, is not perfect. So it says article error, but that's the title. So it is confused. It's a machine. It's not going to be perfect. Just note that the purple comments represent that auto grader, which will do a good job of highlighting some issues, but not perfect. And the student could click on these links to read more about comma usage, to understand exactly what it's pointing out. So that's a hyperlink that takes them to, a handbook. All right, so that's the student workflow. Now remember, this was part 1, and part 2 would be peer review. So you can see I've got a summary page and peer mark. So after the due date passes for the first assignment, all the assignments are collected, then peer review kicks in. So it's just like the physical paper, right? All the students have to turn it in, then it gets shuffled out. Okay, so then the last thing to show you is just that the teacher has a slightly different view. Once all the students have uploaded their papers, they would see this in their inbox, remember, back on that assignment. So if I just go back to my teacher view, do you see here, I click, and instead of it being an empty inbox, I should have that one student, and I would see all, the list of students, and I could download this, I could print it, save to a PDF. But do you also see the notification view? So if I left feedback for my student and I wrote comments on there, I want them to look at those comments, so it would change symbols once the student has looked at my comments and clicked on a comment. The feedback tools for the teacher, the page looks very similar, only this time I have those added comment tools, any of those quick marks maybe that you're interested in dragging, dropping over, citations needed. So if the student clicked on this, it would log it as viewed. So just remember those voice comments are here, the rubric tools, the teacher has like the extra functions for feedback. And the extra ability to download and grade that way. So your question about rubrics, just to show you what that looks like. So let's go through and kind of score those sliding scales. And okay, 3 out of 5. So if I hit apply to grade, do you see up here 15 out of 25 points?
Yes, ma'am.
So that will go into the Canvas gradebook. So I could manually type in 20 out of 25, but if I convert this 3 out of 5 over, however I've set up my rubric, that will convert here. So one more place where you might invite teachers to go, well, 2, I lied, SpeedGrader or the gradebook. So I was referring to the grade, so let's just stick with that. But if I go to my grade book, I can see whatever I've typed into that top portion. Let it load. Do you see it's connected here? 15 is what I typed in, 60%. But if I click on this, I also see that same similarity score and a copy of that paper. So 97%, right? So wherever the teacher's workflow, if they look at their courses and assignments, or if they're looking at their grade book, they could click here to see the red 97%. We are in the grade book. That's one other place you can see how this is all connected, but let me just show you another that I think will be valuable. So here is the help desk if you do have questions, concerns. Now over on the right, do you see SpeedGrader is also available for me here? I can open the same document up and take a look, and that same 97% will be here. So again, the grading tools are overlapping, so if teachers want to highlight and comment on SpeedGrader, they can, and they've got kind of the best of both worlds because 97% is still showing up. I can click on it and get the full view of where, you know, we were earlier. So either through the assignment, the gradebook, SpeedGrader, different angles for basically the same information.